The restaurant was packed that Thursday evening, just like every other night in Manhattan's financial district. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths, and the sound of clinking glasses mixed with quiet conversation. This was the kind of place where a single meal cost more than most people's weekly grocery bill. Lily wiped down another table, her feet aching in the cheap shoes she'd worn for the past 6 months. She couldn't afford new ones yet, not with her grandmother's medical bills piling up at home. Every dollar she earned went straight to keeping the lights on and medicine in the cabinet. She was 26 years old and exhausted in a way that went deeper than just physical tiredness. This was her second job. In the mornings, she worked at a coffee shop near her apartment. At night, she was here carrying plates and forcing smiles for customers who barely noticed she existed. "Table 7 needs you," her manager called out, gesturing toward the corner window seat. Lily nodded and grabbed her notepad. Table 7 was occupied by the same man who'd been coming in 3 times a week for the past month. He always sat alone, always ordered the same thing, and always left a tip that made her catch her breath. Last week, he'd left $200 on a $60 meal. The other servers fought over his section, but Lily had been lucky enough to serve him first, and he'd requested her table ever since. She didn't know why. She wasn't particularly chatty or charming. She just did her job and tried not to mess up the orders. "Good evening, sir," she said, approaching his table with a tired smile. "The usual tonight?" Alexander Ashford looked up from his phone. He was probably in his early 50s, with silver hair that was styled perfectly and a suit that probably cost more than her entire yearly rent. His eyes were dark and thoughtful, and there was something about him that always seemed a little sad even when he smiled. "Yes, please," he said quietly. "And how are you this evening, Lily?" It always surprised her when he used her name. Most customers didn't bother to learn it. "I'm doing well, thank you," she lied smoothly. She'd gotten good at lying over the years. Nobody wanted to hear about her problems. He studied her face for a moment, and she wondered if he could see through her polite mask. But he simply nodded and turned back to his phone. As she walked away, Lily noticed his leather wallet sitting on the edge of the table. It was expensive looking, probably Italian. She made a mental note to be careful around it when she brought his food. 20 minutes later, she returned with his grilled salmon and vegetables. The restaurant was getting busier, and she was juggling 4 tables at once. Her manager kept shooting her looks, silently telling her to move faster. "Here you are, sir," she said, carefully placing the plate in front of him. "Can I get you anything else?" "No, thank you. This looks perfect." She turned to leave, but her elbow caught the edge of his water glass. Time seemed to slow down as she watched the glass tip over, water spreading across the white tablecloth and cascading onto the floor. And worse, much worse, his wallet tumbled off the table and hit the marble floor with a sharp smack. "Oh no, I'm so sorry." Lily dropped to her knees immediately, her heart pounding. This was exactly the kind of mistake that could get her fired. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll clean this up right away." She grabbed the wallet first, and that's when everything changed. The impact had opened it slightly, and several items had spilled out. Credit cards, business cards, and photographs scattered across the floor. Lily started gathering them quickly, her hands shaking with embarrassment. She just wanted to fix her mistake and disappear. But then she saw it. One of the photographs lay face up on the marble, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. Her hands froze. The world around her seemed to fade away, the noise of the restaurant becoming a distant buzz in her ears. It was her mother. The photograph showed a young woman in a yellow sundress, standing by a lake with sunlight in her hair. She was laughing, her hand raised to shield her eyes from the sun. Lily had the exact same photograph at home, tucked into the frame of her mirror. It was one of only 3 pictures she had of her mother, who had died when Lily was just 8 years old. But this couldn't be the same photo. That was impossible. Her photograph was at home, safe in her tiny apartment. So why did this billionaire stranger have an identical copy? Her mind raced through possibilities, each one more confusing than the last. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe this woman just looked like her mother. But no, the setting was identical. The yellow dress, the lake, even the way the light caught her hair. This wasn't similar. This was the same moment frozen in time. "Are you all right?" The voice seemed to come from very far away. Lily looked up and found Alexander standing beside her, concern etched on his face. He must have stood up when she dropped everything. She realized she was still kneeling on the floor, clutching his wallet and the photograph, her hands trembling visibly. She started, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. Sir, I need to ask you something. He seemed puzzled by her reaction. Of course, but please let me help you up first. He extended his hand and Lily let him pull her to her feet, though her legs felt unsteady. She was vaguely aware that other customers were starting to stare. Her manager was moving toward them, probably ready to apologize for her incompetence. But Lily couldn't focus on any of that. All she could see was the photograph in her hand and the man standing in front of her, this wealthy stranger who somehow possessed a piece of her past. This photograph, she said, holding it up with shaking hands. The woman in this picture. How do you know her? Alexander's face changed completely. The polite, distant expression he always wore crumbled, replaced by something raw and painful. He stared at the photograph, then at Lily's face, and she watched as recognition dawned in his eyes. You have her eyes, he whispered, so quietly she almost didn't hear him. My God, you have her eyes. The restaurant had gone quiet around them, or maybe Lily just couldn't hear anything over the pounding of her own heart. Her manager reached them, already apologizing. Sir, I'm so sorry for the disturbance. Lily, go to the back right now. No, Alexander said firmly, holding up his hand. His voice had changed, taking on the commanding tone of someone used to being obeyed. It's fine. There's no problem here. In fact, I need to speak with Lily privately. Is there somewhere we can talk after her shift? The manager looked between them, confused and uncertain. Well, I suppose. But sir, she's still on shift for another hour. I'll pay for any lost service time, Alexander said, pulling out another credit card. And I'd like to reserve this table. I'll wait. Lily found her voice again, though it still trembled. Sir, I don't understand what's happening. Please just tell me. Why do you have my mother's picture? The photograph was still clutched in her hand, and she held it out like evidence of an impossible crime. Around them, other servers had stopped to watch. The entire restaurant seemed to be holding its breath. Alexander looked at her and she saw tears beginning to form in his eyes. This powerful, composed billionaire looked like he was about to break down in the middle of his own meal. Your mother? He repeated softly. This woman's name was Rachel. Rachel Martinez. He paused, struggling with the words. She was the love of my life. The floor seemed to tilt under Lily's feet. Rachel Martinez. That was her mother's name. The name she'd seen on her birth certificate and the small headstone in the cemetery she visited every year on the anniversary of her death. I don't understand, Lily said, and she hated how small her voice sounded. My mother never mentioned anyone named Alexander. I never knew my father. She never told me about him before she died. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, then shock, then something that looked almost like hope and horror mixed together. How old are you? He asked urgently. 26. I'll be 27 in March. Why? What does that matter? Alexander sat down heavily in his chair, as if his legs could no longer support him. He put his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Lily stood frozen, still holding the photograph, her mind unable to process what was happening. The manager tried to intervene again, clearly worried about the scene they were causing, but Alexander waved him away. When he looked up at Lily again, his face was pale. March 15th, he asked. Is your birthday March 15th? Yes, Lily whispered. How did you know that? Because that's 9 months after the last time I saw your mother, he said, his voice breaking. 9 months after the worst mistake of my life. The restaurant was definitely silent now. Lily was aware of dozens of eyes on them, but she couldn't move. Couldn't think. The photograph in her hand suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I need to sit down, she heard herself say. Alexander immediately stood and pulled out the chair across from him. Lily sank into it, grateful, because her knees were about to give out. Her manager opened his mouth to protest, but Alexander fixed him with a look that stopped the words before they could form. Give us a few minutes, Alexander said quietly. It wasn't a request. The manager nodded and retreated, though Lily could feel him hovering nearby, uncertain about what to do with this bizarre situation. Alexander carefully took the other photographs and cards from her trembling hands and placed them back in his wallet. All except the picture of her mother. That he laid gently on the table between them, like it was something precious and fragile. I've carried this picture for 27 years, he said softly, every single day. I've built an empire, traveled the world, met thousands of people, but I've never stopped looking at this face and wondering what happened to her, where she went, why she disappeared. Lily's throat was tight. She didn't disappear. She was in Brooklyn the whole time, raising me by herself until she got sick. She worked 2 jobs just like I do now. She never had much money and she never talked about my father. I always assumed he just didn't want us. She watched Alexander's face crumble at those words. She was pregnant? He whispered. When she left, she was pregnant and I never knew? I don't understand any of this, Lily said, and suddenly she was angry. Angry at this stranger who seemed to be claiming some connection to her mother. To her. Angry at her mother for never explaining. Angry at the universe for dropping this impossible situation in her lap when she was just trying to get through another shift. You're saying you knew my mother? What? That you're my father? That's insane. Why would she never tell me about you? Why would she keep that secret? Because I made a choice, Alexander said, and his voice was heavy with old pain. The worst choice of my life. And your mother disappeared before I could take it back. What choice? Lily demanded. What did you do? Alexander looked down at the photograph of the laughing young woman by the lake. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I chose money over love. I chose my family's business over the woman I wanted to spend my life with. And I've regretted it every single day since. The words hung in the air between them. Lily stared at this man, this stranger who might be her father, and felt her entire world shifting on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about her life, about her mother, about herself was suddenly in question. I need proof, she finally said. I can't just take your word for this. You could be anyone. This could be some kind of trick. Of course, Alexander said immediately. We can do a DNA test. I'll arrange everything. Whatever you need to be certain. He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back of it before sliding it across the table to her. Lily picked it up with numb fingers. The front identified him as Alexander Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries. The back had his personal cell phone number. Call me when you're ready to talk, he said quietly. I know this is overwhelming. I know you need time to process. But please, Lily, please don't disappear like she did. Let me explain everything. Let me tell you about your mother, about what happened between us. You deserve to know the truth. Lily stood up slowly, her legs still shaky. She tucked the business card into her apron pocket, though she wasn't sure yet if she would ever use it. I need to get back to work, she said, though it was possibly the last thing she wanted to do right now. But she needed normalcy. She needed something familiar to hold on to while her entire world was turning upside down. Of course, Alexander said. He reached for his own wallet and pulled out several bills, placing them on the table. Take the rest of the night off, please. You need time to think. Lily looked at the money. It was enough to cover a week's worth of shifts. Part of her wanted to refuse it, to maintain some dignity in this impossible situation. But the practical part of her, the part that always worried about bills and rent, made her take it. Thank you, she whispered. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Lily, your mother was the most amazing woman I ever met. Whatever else you learn about me, about what happened, please know that. She was extraordinary. And from what I can see, you're just like her. Lily didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded and walked away, her hands still trembling. The image of that photograph burned into her mind. As she pushed through the doors to the kitchen, she realized that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The tired waitress who had walked into work that evening was gone. In her place was someone with questions that desperately needed answers, and a past that was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. Lily didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling while her grandmother snored softly in the next room. The business card sat on her nightstand, and every few minutes she'd pick it up and put it back down again. Alexander Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries, the man who claimed to be her father. She'd looked him up online as soon as she got home. The internet was full of articles about him. Billionaire investor, philanthropist, one of the most powerful businessmen in New York. There were photos of him at charity galas, cutting ribbons at building openings, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. But none of the articles mentioned anything about a daughter named Lily, or a woman named Rachel Martinez. By the time the sun came up, Lily had made her decision. She needed to know the truth, even if that truth turned out to be painful. She'd spent her whole life wondering about her father, creating stories in her head about why he wasn't there. Maybe he died in an accident. Maybe he never knew about her. Maybe he was a bad person her mother was protecting her from. She never imagined he might be a billionaire who'd been looking for her mother for 27 years. At 8 in the morning, before she could change her mind, Lily picked up her phone and dialed the number on the card. He answered on the second ring. "This is Alexander." His voice was different on the phone. Less formal, more tired. She wondered if he'd slept at all either. "It's Lily," she said, "from the restaurant." There was a pause and she heard him take a sharp breath. "Lily, thank you for calling. I wasn't sure if you would. I need to hear the whole story," she said. "Everything. About my mother, about you, about why she never told me any of this. And then I want that DNA test, of course. Anything you want. When can we meet? I have a shift at the coffee shop until 2. After that, I'll clear my entire schedule," he said immediately. "Where would you like to meet? Somewhere public, wherever you feel comfortable." They agreed on a coffee shop near Central Park, neutral territory where Lily wouldn't feel trapped. After she hung up, she sat on the edge of her bed, her heart racing. She was really doing this. She was going to meet the man who might be her father and demand answers about the mother she'd lost 18 years ago. Her grandmother shuffled into the room, leaning heavily on her walker. At 78, she was the only family Lily had left, and the medical bills from her recent stroke were the reason Lily worked 2 jobs. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Mija," her grandmother said, settling into the worn armchair by the window. "What's wrong?" Lily had planned to keep this secret until she knew more. But looking at her grandmother's concerned face, she couldn't hold it in. The words came tumbling out, the whole strange story about the photograph and the billionaire and the impossible claim. Her grandmother's reaction was not what Lily expected. Instead of shock or disbelief, the old woman's eyes filled with tears. Her wrinkled hands began to shake. "Oh, Rachel," she whispered. "You kept it from her all these years." Lily felt her stomach drop. "Abuela, you knew about him? You knew about Alexander?" Her grandmother nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes. "Your mother told me everything before she died. Made me promise not to say anything unless you asked directly. She wanted to protect you from the pain of it all." "What pain? What happened between them?" Lily knelt beside her grandmother's chair, taking the old woman's hands in hers. "Please, I need to know." Her grandmother was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant with old memories. "Your mother loved him so much. She talked about him constantly that summer she came home from college. Alexander this, Alexander that. She was planning to marry him after graduation. She showed me the ring he'd picked out, told me all their dreams for the future. So what went wrong? His family found out about her," her grandmother said sadly. "They didn't approve. Rachel wasn't from their world, you understand? She was a scholarship student from Brooklyn, and he was from old money, generations of wealth and privilege. His parents gave him a choice. Take over the family business and marry someone appropriate, or be cut off completely." Lily felt anger rising in her chest. "And he chose the money. It wasn't quite that simple, Mija. From what Rachel told me, he tried to fight them at first, but they were very powerful people, and they knew how to manipulate him. They told him he was throwing away his future, that he'd regret it when the passion faded and he was left with nothing. They said Rachel would grow to resent him for making her poor. But that's not what happened," Lily said. "She left him." Her grandmother nodded. "She found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after his family delivered their ultimatum. She hadn't told him yet because she wanted to wait for the right moment. But then she overheard a conversation between Alexander and his father. She told me he sounded so torn, so confused. His father was promising him the world if he just let Rachel go. So she made the decision for him," Lily said quietly, understanding beginning to dawn. She loved him too much to let him sacrifice everything. She thought she was setting him free to have the life he was meant to have. So she packed up and left school, changed her phone number, moved back to Brooklyn and never contacted him again. She wanted to spare him the choice between his child and his inheritance. Lily felt tears running down her cheeks. All these years she'd thought her father simply didn't want her. But the truth was so much more complicated. Her mother had loved him enough to disappear, to raise a child alone rather than trap him in an impossible situation. "Did he try to find her?" Lily asked. "According to Rachel, yes. He sent letters to her old address, but she'd moved. He tried calling, but she'd changed her number. Eventually, she assumed he'd moved on with his life. And she built a life here, working hard to give you everything she could. Lily thought about her mother, working 2 jobs just like Lily did now, always tired but always trying to smile. Making birthday cakes from scratch because she couldn't afford bakery ones. Sewing Lily's clothes because new ones were too expensive. And never, not once, complaining about doing it alone. "Why didn't she tell me?" Lily whispered. "Why did she let me think he just abandoned us?" "She was going to," her grandmother said. "When you got older. When you could understand the complexity of it. But then she got sick and it all happened so fast. By the end, she was barely conscious. There wasn't time for long explanations." Lily stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the morning sun over their neighborhood. Everything looked the same, but nothing was the same anymore. She had a father who'd been looking for her mother all these years, a father who never knew she existed. "I'm meeting him this afternoon," she said, to hear his side of the story. "Good," her grandmother said firmly. "You deserve to know everything, and Mija? Don't judge him too harshly. We all make mistakes when we're young and scared. What matters is what we do after." The coffee shop was crowded when Lily arrived at 2:30, still wearing her work clothes because she hadn't had time to change. She spotted Alexander immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, staring down at an untouched cup of coffee, looking out of place in his expensive suit among the students and artists. He stood up as soon as he saw her, his face anxious and hopeful at the same time. "Thank you for coming," he said as she approached. "Can I get you something?"
"Coffee, tea?"
"Anything you want?" "Just water is fine," Lily said, sitting down across from him. She needed to stay clear-headed for this conversation. He quickly got her water from the counter, and when he returned, they sat in awkward silence for a moment. Lily had so many questions she didn't know where to start. Alexander seemed to sense her struggle. "Would it help if I just told you everything from the beginning? My side of what happened?" Lily nodded, wrapping her hands around the cold water glass. He took a deep breath and began. "I met your mother in my junior year at Columbia. She was in my economics class, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. She was so smart, so passionate about everything. Most of the people I knew from my background were just coasting through school on their parents' money. But Rachel was there on scholarship, and she took every class seriously. She had all these dreams about starting her own business someday, helping other people from her community." His face softened with the memory, and Lily saw genuine love there. This wasn't someone making up a story. This was someone remembering the best part of his life. "We started studying together, and then we were spending every free moment together. I'd never felt that way about anyone. With her, I could just be myself. Not the Ashford heir, not the person my parents wanted me to be." "Just Alexander. When did your family find out?" Lily asked. "The summer before senior year. Someone saw us together and mentioned it to my mother at some social event. My parents sat me down and explained very clearly that Rachel was not an appropriate match for someone in my position. They had already picked out several suitable young women from good families for me to consider." "That's horrible," Lily said quietly. "It was, and I told them so. I said I loved Rachel and I was going to marry her no matter what they thought. That's when they gave me the ultimatum." He paused, pain crossing his face. "They said if I married her, I'd be cut off completely. No trust fund, no position in the company, no family support at all. They'd disown me publicly." "But you have money now," Lily pointed out. "You could have built something yourself." "Yes, but I was 21 and stupid and scared. They convinced me that I'd be destroying not just my future, but Rachel's too. They said she'd grow to hate me when we were struggling to pay rent, when we couldn't afford the life she deserved. They painted this picture of us bitter and resentful, our love destroyed by poverty." He rubbed his eyes, looking exhausted. "I told myself I just needed time, that I could take over the company, prove myself, and then convince them to accept Rachel. I thought I could have both. I was an idiot. What happened when my mother found out? I never got the chance to explain my plan to her. One day she was there and the next day she was gone. Her phone was disconnected. Her roommate said she'd moved out suddenly and didn't leave a forwarding address. I thought maybe she'd heard about my family's ultimatum and decided to make it easier for me by leaving. She was pregnant," Lily said. "She found out right around that time." Alexander's face crumbled. "I didn't know. I swear to you I had no idea. If I had known about you, nothing could have kept me away. Not my parents, not the money, nothing. But you looked for her? For years. I hired private investigators. I sent letters to every address I could find connected to her. I went to Brooklyn and walked the streets hoping I'd run into her. But she'd vanished completely. He pulled out his wallet and showed her a stack of returned letters still in their envelopes. Every single one came back undeliverable. Lily took the letters with shaking hands. They were addressed to her mother at what must have been her college address. The stamps were decades old, the paper yellowed with time. She could see her mother's name written in careful handwriting over and over again. "When did you stop looking?" she asked. "I never stopped. Even after I got married to the woman my parents chose, even after I had other children, I never stopped wondering what happened to Rachel. My marriage ended in divorce after 5 years because my wife said I was never really present. Never really hers. She was right. Part of me was always somewhere else with the woman I'd lost." He took a photograph out of his wallet, the same one Lily had seen yesterday. "I've carried this every day for 27 years, on business trips to meetings everywhere, looking at her face and wondering if she ever thought about me, if she ever forgave me for being too weak to choose her when it mattered." Lily felt tears on her cheeks. This was so much more complicated than she'd imagined. There was no villain in this story. Just two young people who'd loved each other and been torn apart by circumstances and bad choices and terrible timing. "She died when I was 8, Lily said softly. "Cancer. It was fast, just a few months from diagnosis to the end. I was so young that I barely remember her being sick. I just remember her being there one day and gone the next." Alexander's shoulders shook and Lily realized he was crying. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I never got to tell her I never stopped loving her. That I would have given up everything if I'd known. That letting her go was the biggest mistake of my life." They sat in silence for a while, two people connected by a woman who was gone, mourning what could have been. Around them, the coffee shop buzzed with normal life, people laughing and talking and complaining about ordinary things. But at their corner table, the weight of the past pressed down like a physical thing. "I want to do the DNA test," Lily finally said. "My grandmother confirmed your story, but I need to be absolutely certain before we go any further." "Of course. I've already contacted a clinic. They can see us today if you're available. The results will take about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, Lily would know for certain if this man was really her father. If her entire understanding of her life needed to be rewritten. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." As they stood to leave, Alexander hesitated. "Lily, whatever the test shows, I want you to know something. If you are my daughter, I know I can never make up for the years I missed. I can never replace the father you should have had growing up. But I would like the chance to try to be part of your life now if you'll let me." Lily looked at this man, this stranger who might be her father, and saw genuine regret and hope in his eyes. She thought about her mother, who'd loved him enough to let him go. She thought about all the years she'd spent wondering about the father she'd never known. "One step at a time," she said. "First the test. Then we figure out what comes next." He nodded, relief flooding his face. "One step at a time. That's fair." As they walked out of the coffee shop together into the afternoon sun, Lily felt like she was stepping into a completely different life. The girl who'd walked into work yesterday was gone. In her place was someone with a past that was finally coming into focus, and a future that was suddenly full of possibilities she'd never imagined. She just hoped she was ready for what came next. The 3 weeks of waiting for the DNA results were the longest of Lily's life. She tried to go about her normal routine, working her shifts at the coffee shop and the restaurant, taking care of her grandmother, paying bills. But everything felt different now, like she was living in a story that hadn't finished being written yet. Alexander called her every few days, always respectful, never pushy. They'd talk for a few minutes about ordinary things. He'd ask about her day, tell her small details about his work. Neither of them mentioned the test or what it might mean. It was like they were both afraid to hope too much. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 22 days after they'd given their samples, Lily's phone rang while she was pouring coffee for the morning rush. "The results are in," Alexander said without preamble. His voice was shaking. "Would you like to come to my office? Or I can come to you, whatever you prefer." Lily's hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the coffee pot. "Your office is fine. I can be there in an hour." She told her manager she had a family emergency and left work early. The subway ride to Manhattan felt endless. She kept thinking about what her life would look like depending on what that envelope said. If the test was positive, everything changed. If it was negative, she'd have to accept that this had all been some strange coincidence and go back to being alone in the world, except for her grandmother. Ashford Industries occupied 15 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Lily had never been in a building this fancy before. The lobby had marble floors and a fountain, and everyone walking through looked important and purposeful in their expensive suits. The receptionist was expecting her. "Ms. Martinez? Mr. Ashford is waiting for you in his private office. Take the elevator to the 42nd floor." The elevator was so fast it made Lily's stomach drop. When the doors opened, a young woman in a sharp blazer was waiting. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Catherine, Mr. Ashford's executive assistant. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Catherine stopped at a large wooden door and knocked once before opening it. "Ms. Martinez is here, sir." Alexander was standing by the window, staring out at the skyline. He turned as soon as Lily entered, and she could see the envelope on his desk, still sealed. "Thank you, Catherine. Hold all my calls." Catherine nodded and closed the door, leaving them alone. The office was huge, bigger than Lily's entire apartment. Bookshelves lined one wall, and there were pictures everywhere. Lily noticed photos of two people who looked like they were in their 20s, a young man and woman. They had Alexander's eyes. "My other children," Alexander said, noticing where she was looking. "Daniel and Sophia. They're from my first marriage." Lily nodded, suddenly feeling very out of place. These people in the photographs looked like they belonged in this world of glass towers and expensive suits. Lily was wearing her coffee shop uniform and sneakers with holes in them. "Should we open it?" Alexander asked, gesturing to the envelope. "Together," Lily said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. They sat down on opposite sides of his massive desk. Alexander picked up the envelope, and Lily watched his hands shake as he opened it. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and stared at it for a long moment. His face went through so many emotions that Lily couldn't read them all. Then he looked up at her, and there were tears streaming down his face. "Lily," he whispered, "you're my daughter. It's a 99.9% match. You're really my daughter." The room seemed to tilt. Lily had been preparing for this possibility for 3 weeks, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way nothing else had. This man was her father, her actual biological father. After 26 years of wondering, she finally had an answer. "Can I see it?" she asked. He passed her the paper with shaking hands. The scientific language was hard to understand, but the conclusion was clear. Alexander Ashford was identified as the biological father of Lily Martinez with near certainty. "I have a father," Lily said out loud, testing how the words felt. They sounded strange, like a foreign language she was trying to learn. "And I have a daughter I never knew about," Alexander said. He stood up and walked around the desk, then hesitated, unsure. "Can I hug you? Is that okay?" Lily stood too and let him wrap his arms around her. He was crying openly now, his whole body shaking. She found herself crying too, mourning all the years they'd lost and feeling the weight of this new reality settling onto her shoulders. When they finally pulled apart, Alexander went to his desk and pulled out a box of tissues. They both tried to compose themselves, but it was difficult. The magnitude of what had just been confirmed was overwhelming. "What happens now?" Lily asked, wiping her eyes. "Whatever you want to happen," Alexander said. "This is your choice, Lily. You don't owe me anything. I know I can't just waltz into your life and expect you to suddenly think of me as a father, but I want to try if you'll let me. I want to get to know you. I want to be part of your life." Before Lily could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. Catherine's voice came through, sounding stressed. "Mr. Ashford, I'm sorry, but Sophia is here and she's insisting on seeing you immediately. She says it's urgent," Alexander frowned. "Tell her I'm in an important meeting." "I did, sir, but she's very upset." Alexander looked at Lily apologetically. "I'm sorry. My daughter can be persistent. Would you mind if she came in for just a moment?" Lily's stomach twisted with anxiety. She wasn't ready to meet Alexander's other children yet. But before she could say anything, the door burst open and a woman in an elegant navy suit stormed in. Sophia Ashford was beautiful in the way rich people often are, with perfect hair and jewelry that probably cost more than Lily made in a year. She stopped short when she saw Lily sitting there. "Who is this?" Sophia demanded, looking between them. "Dad, why are you crying?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Sophia, please sit down. There's something I need to tell you." "I don't want to sit down," I came here because the board meeting has been moved up to this afternoon, and you're not answering Catherine's emails. What's going on? Sophia, sit down, Alexander said more firmly. Something in his tone made her obey. She sank into a leather chair, her eyes fixed on Lily with undisguised suspicion. Alexander picked up the DNA test results. This is Lily Martinez. And as of 10 minutes ago, I have confirmation that she's my daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia stared at her father like he'd started speaking another language. Excuse me? She finally said, her voice dangerously quiet. Before I met your mother, I was in love with a woman named Rachel Martinez. We were planning to marry, but circumstances pulled us apart. I never knew Rachel was pregnant when she left. Lily is 26 years old. She's your half-sister. Sophia's face went through several expressions: shock, confusion, and then something cold and calculating. She turned to look at Lily, and there was no warmth in her eyes at all. This is insane, Sophia said. Dad, this woman is clearly scamming you. How convenient that she shows up now, claiming to be your long-lost daughter. Let me guess, she needs money? The DNA test is conclusive, Alexander said sharply. Lily is my daughter. DNA test can be faked, Sophia shot back. And even if it's real, so what? She's been fine for 26 years without us. Why does she need to be part of our lives now? Sophia, that's enough, Alexander said, his voice hard in a way Lily hadn't heard before. But Sophia was just getting started. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. Do you have any idea what this looks like? The board is already nervous about your judgment after that failed merger last quarter. Now you're going to announce you have a secret daughter who works as a waitress? They'll think you're having some kind of breakdown. I don't care what the board thinks, Alexander said. Well, I care. Daniel and I have worked our entire lives to build this company with you, and now you're going to throw everything away for some stranger who happens to share your DNA? Lily had heard enough. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I should go. No, Alexander said immediately. Lily, please don't leave. It's fine, Lily said, even though it wasn't fine at all. She felt like she'd been slapped. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come here. She headed for the door, but Alexander moved quickly to block her path. Please, give me a chance to handle this. Sophia is upset, but she'll come around. Will I? Sophia said coldly from behind them. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. This woman could be anyone. She could be working with someone to con you out of your fortune. Lily turned to face her. I don't want his money. I didn't even want to find him. This just happened. How convenient that it just happened at his favorite restaurant. Sophia sneered. How many times did you serve him before you dropped that wallet? How long did you plan this little performance? That's enough! Alexander's voice thundered through the office. Sophia, I understand this is a shock, but I will not let you speak to Lily this way. She is my daughter, which makes her your sister, and you will treat her with respect. Or what? Sophia challenged. You'll cut me out of your will. Replace me with your new charity project. The words hung in the air like poison. Lily felt sick. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. She didn't belong in this world of glass towers and family businesses and board meetings. She was just a waitress from Brooklyn who'd accidentally stumbled into something she didn't understand. I'm leaving, Lily said quietly. Alexander, thank you for the DNA test. Now we both know the truth, and that's enough. You have a life here, a family. I'm not trying to take anything from anyone. She walked past him and out the door before he could stop her. Catherine looked up in surprise as Lily rushed past her desk. Behind her, she could hear Alexander calling her name, but she didn't stop. She just kept walking until she reached the elevator. The ride down felt even longer than the ride up. Lily's vision was blurry with tears. She'd been stupid to hope that finding her father would somehow make her life better. All it had done was open up a whole new world of pain and complications. When she got outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright. She was halfway down the block when she heard running footsteps behind her. Lily, wait. She turned to find Alexander jogging toward her, completely out of breath. For a man in his 50s, he'd moved fast. Several people on the sidewalk were staring at the sight of a billionaire CEO running down the street in his expensive suit. Please, he gasped, bending over with his hands on his knees. Don't run away like your mother did. I can't lose you again. I'm not running away, Lily said. I'm being realistic. You have a family, Alexander. A real family who's been with you their whole lives. I'm just a stranger who happens to have your DNA. Your daughter made that very clear. Sophia is scared. Alexander said, straightening up. She's afraid of change, afraid of losing her place in the family. But that's not an excuse for how she treated you. I'll talk to her, make her understand. You can't make someone accept me, Lily said. And honestly, I don't need to be accepted. I've been fine on my own for 26 years. I have my grandmother. I have my jobs. I have my life. Maybe finding each other was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Alexander said desperately. Lily, I've spent 27 years wondering what happened to your mother. Wondering what my life could have been if I'd made different choices. Now I have a chance to know you, to be part of your life, and I'm not going to let my daughter's fear drive you away. It's not just her fear, Lily said. I saw those pictures in your office. Your kids went to fancy schools, they work in your company, they belong in that world. I'm a waitress who can barely pay rent. We're from completely different universes. That doesn't matter to me, but it matters to them. And it matters to me. I don't want to spend my life feeling like I don't belong, like I'm the outsider who ruined their perfect family. Alexander was quiet for a moment, and Lily could see him struggling with something. Finally he spoke. What if I could prove to you that I'm serious about this? What if I could show you that you're not an outsider, that you're my daughter just as much as Sophia and Daniel are?
How could you possibly prove that?
Let me help your grandmother, he said. Catherine mentioned you took a call during our first meeting about medical bills. Let me help with her care. Not as charity, but as family, taking care of family. Lily stepped back. I don't want your money. It's not about money. It's about letting me be your father in some small way. Your grandmother raised you after your mother died. She's important to you, which makes her important to me. Please, Lily, let me do this one thing. Lily thought about her grandmother, about the bills piling up, about the cheaper medications they'd had to switch to because they couldn't afford the better ones. She thought about how tired her grandmother always was, how much pain she was in that she tried to hide. I need to think about it, she said finally. That's fair, Alexander said. Take all the time you need. But please don't disappear. Keep my number. Call me when you're ready to talk. I'll wait as long as it takes. He pulled out his wallet and handed her another business card, this one with a different number. That's my personal cell. Not my work phone. Anytime, day or night, you can reach me. Lily took the card, though she wasn't sure she'd ever use it. I should go. I have a shift tonight. Can I at least give you a ride home? She shook her head. I need to think, and I think better on the subway. He nodded, accepting her boundary even though she could see it pained him. Okay, but Lily, I meant what I said. You're my daughter. Nothing Sophia said changes that. Nothing can change that. Lily walked away without responding, heading toward the subway station. She could feel his eyes on her back the whole way, but she didn't turn around. She had too much to process, too many emotions fighting for space in her chest. On the train home, she pulled out both business cards, the official one and the personal one. Two different ways to reach the same man. Her father. The word still felt strange. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Daniel, Alexander's son. I heard what happened with Sophia. I'm sorry she reacted that way. I'd like to meet you properly when you're ready. No pressure, just coffee and conversation. Your brother. Lily stared at the words your brother for a long time. She had a brother. And a sister, even if that sister hated her. She had a father who wanted to be part of her life. After 26 years of having almost no family at all, suddenly she was drowning in relatives she didn't know how to talk to. When she got home, her grandmother took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. The test was positive? She asked gently. Lily nodded against her grandmother's shoulder. He's really my father. And his other kids hate me. And I don't know what to do. Give it time, mija, her grandmother said, stroking her hair the way she had when Lily was little. Family is complicated. But if this man is anything like the person your mother loved, he'll fight for you. And you're strong enough to handle whatever comes next. Lily hoped her grandmother was right, because she had a feeling things were about to get a lot more complicated before they got better. 2 weeks passed, and Lily tried to pretend everything was normal. She went to work, came home, took care of her grandmother, and avoided thinking about the business cards sitting in her nightstand drawer. But Alexander called every other day, leaving gentle voicemails asking how she was doing, never pressuring her to respond. Daniel texted occasionally too, just small messages. A funny meme about office life. A picture of a sunset he thought was pretty. Little reminders that he was there if she wanted to talk. Lily never responded, but she didn't block his number either. Then one morning, everything fell apart. Lily was serving breakfast at the coffee shop when a group of women at table 6 started whispering and pointing at their phones. She didn't think much of it until she heard one of them say her name. That's her. That's definitely her. The waitress who's claiming to be Alexander Ashford's daughter. Lily's blood went cold. She turned to look, and one of the women quickly hid her phone screen. But it was too late. Lily had seen the headline, "Billionaire's Secret Love Child, Gold Digger or Long-Lost Daughter." Her hands started shaking so badly she had to put down the coffee pot. She walked straight to the back room where her manager was doing inventory. "I need to see something on my phone." "It's an emergency." Her manager looked annoyed but nodded. Lily pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and searched her own name. The results made her feel sick. The story was everywhere. Business news sites, gossip blogs, even local news channels. Someone had leaked the story about her and Alexander, and they'd made it as scandalous as possible. There were photos of her leaving Alexander's office building 2 weeks ago, her eyes red from crying. Photos of her at the restaurant in her uniform. Photos of Alexander that made him look foolish and desperate. The articles were cruel. They called her a con artist, an opportunist, someone who'd seduced her way into a billionaire's wallet. They dug up everything about her life, her mother's death, her grandmother's medical bills, her 2 jobs. They made it all sound calculated and fake. The comments were even worse. Thousands of people who didn't know her, passing judgment on her life, her character, her mother's memory. She's clearly after his money. Gold Digger saw an opportunity and took it. Feel bad for his real kids having to deal with this fraud. Lily felt like she couldn't breathe. Her manager came over, concern on his face. "You okay? You look like you're going to pass out." "I need to go home," Lily managed to say. "I'm sorry. I need to leave right now." She didn't wait for permission. She just grabbed her bag and walked out, ignoring the stares from the customers who'd recognized her. Outside, the morning air felt too cold. She started walking, not sure where she was going, just knowing she needed to move. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers calling. Texts from people she hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if the stories were true. She turned it off and kept walking. She ended up at the small park near her apartment, sitting on a bench, trying to process what had just happened. Her life had been private, quiet, manageable. Now it was splashed across the internet for everyone to judge. "I thought I'd find you here." Lily looked up to find Daniel standing there holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. He gestured to the empty space on the bench. "Can I sit?"